Hey everyone, I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares and sends my way. From the heart, gracias. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype to this video to help push the message out. Thank you. Well, everyone, today what I want to touch on just basically how treasury politicking can become, inside, right? And keep in mind, this is the time of the shoes. They weren't walking amongst us. They weren't as brave as they are now because they were slammed. In reality, they needed camaradas and they knew it, right? But anyways, for this, I'll take you to Ironwood. Right before I left, I had just done a pegada with some fool that came from high desert claiming he he had claim to the yard, right, by the uppers. And anyways, I would run to make with terco, and it was just boo boo, right? It was all lies. So anyways, I dealt with that and I was able to get away with it, right? And on this yard, there was an individual I used to like a lot, even though he was a knucklehead. But then that day he knew how to behave himself, and I don't say it like downplaying them or in any way, right? Which was Spike from 18th Street. I have mentioned him before. I would run into him later on in Mexico. But anyways, at this time, we're right there. And again, Ironwood was a set tripping yard. There was nothing but homies when it came to Raza. We're all paisanos, right? And everybody was split up. You know, homies from Bakers. LA was split up in all its factions. East LA, Southeast, Northeast, West. You guys get it. San Fernando. You know, and 18th Street's always big on any yard you hit, right? Anywhere. But anyways, amongst these, the one that was taking care of the car, you could say, was a Spike. When things surface or something had to get dealt with homies from 18, he would always, lift his hand. He was a straight fool, right? And I mean that with respect in the sense that he just didn't care, you know. And anyways, there was a homie there, Thumper from 18th Street. I believe he was from the clique. No, I don't remember his clique. He was from West Side 18 though, right? And Thumper, he was doing his thing. He was in touch with Tecolote, and again, they were doing their thing. There was many homies on the yard from 18, and a few of them they were in touch either with Niteowl, Caballo, Tecolote, or some were in touch like with Shotgun Indio for Artie and Yaco. It was whatever, right? That was none of my business. If they did whatever they did, They just paid their respect, and they didn't have no say so at the end of the day when it came to the yard, right? But anyways, there had been a couple issues with vatos from 18th Street, and when they uprise, the vatos had to get whacked, right? For example, Cisco, that was there from West Side 18, he had a, I don't know, he had a character to him that you just didn't listen, man. And he had already been Southsiding, he already had been disciplined, he had already been whacked to get right, and he got sent to patch himself right, and he continued being there, and he just kept it up, and it came down to, hey, this fool can't program no more with us. He don't wanna take in the rules and regulations on how to behave, and he could cause a conflict, right? And he just can't be here no more. He has to bounce. So Thumper would be the one that took care of it, right? And that's just to mention one. In this time frame, he did three pegadas on three different individuals from 18th Street, and he never went to the hole for none of them, right? We'll just say that, and everything was good. Within time, though, there was a camarada that came from my desert, Sporty. He was also from West Side 18. He was from the Hollywood clique, though, if I'm not mistaken. And he got there claiming he was doing many things for many individuals, right? But he had broke the pattern. What I mean by that is he got there claiming he was working for Sherm, directly with Sherm. And that's nothing bad. But, all the other vatos before him that were there, in one way or another, they were responding to 18th Street Billies, or there was a mediator that was a homie from 18, if you guys get it. Sporty wasn't. So, again, there was nothing wrong with that. But he got there claiming he was authorized to do a lot of things, which I believed it, right? Because, again, he was under Sherm, and Sherm was a wild one. And he was sending soldados to do things and leave him with the decision, the responsibilities. He wouldn't get involved in it unless it was necessary. But while he's there, High Desert was also Terco's playground. He had soldados there. He had a part of the yarda. So when I reported that the homie was there, that I had read his paperwork, everything checked out on my end, right? For the homie. Uh, I sent up. It took a while, and then it came back down. And the homie was already hitting and sending Sherm, whatever, right? He was doing with what he said he needed to do, right? And it came back from Terco that he had to bounce, that he was no good, and that was a hard pill to swallow because he's sending Güero already feria. That's Güero Sherm's worker. And even though he was real loose with how many workers he had, you just didn't take away from him. You didn't dig in his pocket. And he was an individual at the moment. You know, he had a lot of wiggle room. But anyways, what came down from Terco is it is what it is, right? It's his yard, and it was it would be in regards to, there's a rule in play in the system. I said it before many times. It don't matter who a homie takes off on. If he's right or wrong, that don't matter when things happen, right? For example, where he was at, I guess there was a homie. He was about 10 feet away, and there was a homie that got into it with the free staff. And I know everyone's gonna be like a free staff. That again, that don't matter. That's none of our concern, right? Who it is. He's just not one of us. And anyways, the vato will get into it, and I guess he'll start binking on the free staff. Well, the homie would end up getting down good with the free staff for a while to have the response team from the COs get there, and he starts getting boogieing with the COs, right? A couple homies from downstairs ran up there and jumped in because that's the obligation, right? And Sporty, that was closer, he didn't jump in. He allowed things to play out, and you know, at all surface. And even though he wasn't directly involved, he was so close that they would pick him up. You know, that's how he would eventually get moved. You know, he had already been Southside and in the hole, and everything was up. What I mean by up, they had already sent word to Terco, they had already sent word to Sherm and to Psycho. They were the ones that were mainly on the yard, right? And it never came back. The vato would end up getting moved, and when he hit down there, of course, he got there, he started hitting, and he started sending Feria to Wettersham. So Wettersham said, "Oh, I could sweep this under the rug, and it's money coming in. I'm gonna keep doing your thing." He forgets what happened over here. If nobody brings it up, it's a dead issue. All that matters is I'm getting paid. But Terco, he was just different, right? And he fell on a yard that was just Terco's. He wasn't sharing it with nobody like that, right? But anyways, I'll bring it up to Spike, and you could see in Spike he didn't really like it because he liked the individual, and so I would end up showing him, everything, and Terco knew it was going to be an issue because everything I told you in the explanation came from him. And in reality, for Billy to go out his way to give you a why it's rare. Usually they just tell you, hey, homeboy did so and so. He weaned out, he sat down, and he needs to go. But nevertheless, he wrote an explanation, right? And I showed it to Spike and Thumper again. He was a good hitter for them, and he just didn't care. He felt he was good at what he did, and he was. You can't take nothing from the homie, right? He would end up taking on that mission and just walking the track one day. He waited. If you know how the yard's built, right? Basically, he waited to one end where it was not a blind spot, but it was farther from the tower, right? And he starts boogieing, starts going to town on Homeboy, on Sporty. So they would end up getting caught though on this one. So they got sent to the hole, and in the hole, basically, right away I have to send word behind them explaining Thumper situation and Sporty situation to the vato running the hole at the moment, right? And basically, it was Thumper's good. It was order from so and the whole belonged also to Terco. And when it came to Sporty, he was done. There was no coming back from him. You know, rock him to sleep if he comes back out to yard. Do what you gotta do. But other than that, he's done. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a personal issue. It was an order. So we left it at that. And I knew Ironwood was one of them places where sometimes the committee would keep you there. They would give you a shoe, and instead of sending you to a shoe, they will keep you there up to a year, right? And then eventually kick you back out. Sometimes not to the same yard, but nevertheless get kicked out. And the homie would end up coming back out, Thumper, and he would get on his feet right away. I remember one day he told me like, "Hey, Chino, I know everything that you do for Terco, and I want you to do me a paro and firm me four gramos, so I could get on my feet and start, so I could start sending palabra or sending feria to Tecolote and get on my feet." So Simon, again, he was gonna pay for them, right? And everything's good. The homie kept doing his thing. There was no issues. I understood the homie's mentality. You know, I would I would end up learning that that mentality was the wrong one. Every pegada you raising your hand and keep racing it and racing it, it was just wrong. I'll tell you like this. I did 6 pegadas in Ironwood. All of them were in because individuals tried to take the yard, or supposedly they had palabra, they were coming from the bay or whatever. That I did them myself because I didn't want to push it on a homie. And then for reals, them having that palabra to reach a pili and put a homie in a spot where now he's in the shoe and he's being politic against him, and he don't have no backbone to defend himself, right? So I would end up doing them always with the sense of getting caught. I didn't though. I did 5 and I got away with them. You know, on the 6th one is where I got caught, and that's because Terco didn't like that fool uh, box, and that Enriquez dude at all. I have never heard a member call another member because supposedly that fool is still active and out his name, and but anyways, the end goal when I caught that 6th one was I was to stay on him until I took his life. I wasn't able to, right, due to well, you guys know the Judas and all that. What ends up happening, they spray you, and then next thing you know, they start using them sticks on you, and they make it difficult. But anyways, When I hit the shoe, I got yelled at for that. Sincerely, I got yelled at by numerous of Pilis, not just one, that told me, hey, Chino, if you had the Jardín, why were you doing missions? Why were you doing this? And I would try to explain and be like, and if that's the end goal for a camarada, then if he can't defend himself, that's his pedo. I had never looked at it like that though, and even though they would tell me, I would never act like that. At the end of the day, we're trying to make homies, right? To build our gente and not destroy them. And anyways, that was what ended up happening with Sporty. Tecolote got upset, because he was out of action for a while, and it was money he lost, and he wanted to know why out of all the 18 streeters there, he was always the one taking care of the missions, right? And believe me, it wasn't because 18th Street didn't have shooters on the yard. Like I told you, Spike would have ran through anybody. It's just the homie wanted to because he wanted to earn a name, or that was my mentality too at one point, right? I want to whack every individual that needs to get whacked to, so my name reaches up there, which is looked as dumb. The main objective should always be staying on the yard, holding your place, making feria, and just basically holding that seat in representation of a member, the member you're under. That's what counts. All that soldado, you know, hitting, yeah, it counts if they're individuals that have a big target on them, and it comes straight from them, right? To deal with them, and in that case, is for you to be willing to take their head off. Period. So they're not walking in no way, shape, or form anywhere. But anyways, I got off track. When the homie came back out to the yard and started doing his thing, I had just loaned him the four, right? So he would get on his feet. And I never said anything to Terco. It was just basically a, well, I'll just say it like this, right? Terco would never have asked me how much I bring in because it would come in through my avenue, through my people. So I would just at least a third of a pedazo would always hit his hands, and he was glad with it. But I would at times get a pedazo y medio, two pedazos, and you know that's where I had loaned them four things. To not make this story longer, eventually night I would end up reaching out to the yard. Mainly he ended up reaching out to Terco, because by his own people, he had already figured out who had the yard, whose yard was it, everything. And as part of you checking in and about where you're at and your surroundings, right? And Nairo was upset. He felt the 18th Street car wasn't pulling their weight, and he felt this individual was in the wrong with Sporty. And here's the kicker: Tecolote did not once respond to that. What I mean is saying, what do you mean? I'm the one that sent that out there for him to get hit. That was a right call. He just stood quiet and heard Tecolote And Tecolote said he wanted other individuals to step up to the plate and remove Thumper. He didn't want him on the yard no more for nothing. You know, Later on, a whole bunch of things surfaced, but they were all lies. I was there, and once I told Spike this, like I said, Spike was a fool. For those that knew him, he took care of it ASAP. I mean, Gacho. He did the homie Gacho. And the worst part is when you sit down and write that out my bill to send to the hole and just tell the homies, hey, this individual just got out from here being good, from a good movida. A different Billy didn't agree with it, and he's no good no more. He's done. And this is how good of an individual Thumper was. Even though he was on the shine, he had gotten hit, he was no good no more, no matter what he did. Um, the money for them four things came. You know, nobody owed me four of them like that, and just the money one day arrived. And if you would have been one of them scandalous individuals, he would have sat on the money. But it's just how it goes. It don't matter how good of a camarada you are. Your actions are gonna always be measured by an individual that most of the times is just going off on hearsay. You know, like Night Out. I never really did anything with Night Out, but I seen a lot of things of him, and he was one of them real quick to make a decision without doing the footwork and checking on the camarada. Like in this case, he had a good, solid homie that he could have gave him clecha and told him, slow down. This is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to stop doing. And instead, he got upset. He got upset with the whole round fly and he took it out on him just to prove a point. And then you had Terco real quick to speak his mind and defend his things. And at that moment, Thumper did him that favor. But if think about it, he knew where Naito was going with this. He could have stopped it. He could have spoke up for him. Instead, he let it ride out. So, like I say, is facts. What you do for one individual is never gonna matter for the next individual. And if you think a Pili's gonna speak for you to another Pili, man, I'm sorry to say it. I seen it once or twice, which I will get into, but it's so rare, especially now. Things just took a turn for I don't even know how to say it. But with this said, this is what I wanted to touch on. On the end of the day, like I said, the end look is just that. You go into prison, and like a lot of individuals say, to earn your stripes, you gotta go inside, yeah. But to know that exact paces to earn them stripes, again, you're taking your life and you're flicking it in the air and taking a chance of making it and taking the proper steps or pissing someone off and getting whacked and removed, and nothing you done is worth anything. Think about it. Even everything you do on the streets, in the sense for your neighborhood, once they make that call inside, right away on the streets, you're basura, you ain't good, and they ain't never gonna get the full details of what occurs inside. They're just gonna run with the flow. It's how things are made. So again, value yourself, stay true to yourself, and loyal to loved ones.